Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Coach Prime, the Colorado Buffaloes land, what I think is a massive transfer portal addition in former Tulsa wide receiver Joseph Williams. This is a kid that we've talked about in connection to a lot of top tier Power Four programs. There were not a lot of teams that didn't want to add Joseph Williams to their roster heading into 2025, committed to Utah originally, signing his paperwork with Colorado. Couple of really big things to point out. One, there's a lot of outside voices that talk about Colorado and not being able to sustain the success they've had because they're too reliant on the transfer portal. You can build a roster through the transfer portal as well. And you've seen Colorado lean into grabbing young, talented kids in the portal. Joseph Williams, kind of a perfect example. Like, this kid was a baller, for lack of better terms, as a true freshman at Tulsa, coming to Colorado with 3 years of eligibility remaining, including a redshirt year. And so this is a kid that's going to be within this Colorado offense for the next couple of years. And I think more importantly, he's kind of exactly what you're looking for in the replacement of Will Sheppard. Will Sheppard wasn't the biggest name on this Colorado offense. It's hard to be when you're playing with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. Will Sheppard added a dimension to this Colorado passing attack that I thought they were missing in 2023 in terms of that bigger bodied boundary wide receiver that can work vertically down the field. Joseph Williams kind of slides in and I think replaces that kind of difference maker for Colorado in this offense. And, you're looking at what the wide receiver room is going to look like for Colorado. Yeah, you lose Travis Hunter, LeJohntay Wester, Jimmy Horn, Will Sheppard. Those are four wide receivers that will be selected in the NFL draft over the next couple of months. Colorado's doing a nice job replacing some of that production. I want to get into Joseph Williams. I want to talk about what this wide receiver room might look like in 2025. Talk about a few other names that Colorado's looking for in the portal. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the Colorado fans, it's been really fun breaking down these commitments over the last couple of weeks, and y'all continue to show a ton of support to the boys. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into Joseph Williams. And I think it starts with, as a true freshman, this kid was incredibly impressive. And I had to kind of go back. He's one of those guys that I don't watch a ton of Tulsa football on Saturdays, so I had to go back and catch a few of his games. I think what first stands out is the physicality at the catch point that this kid plays with. 6'2", 200 pounds. When that football's up in the air and it's a 50-50 shot, I mean, Joseph Williams is coming down with the majority of those targets. And I think, secondly, he's a guy that gives you that explosiveness in the passing attack, which has been so crucial for Colorado the last couple of years. When you go back to some of these games for Colorado in 2024, there's been times where the offense hasn't necessarily found its groove, and then they start finding it with the explosive plays. Colorado just surrounds this offense with so many difference makers that at one point they're going to find an explosive and change the football game. Joseph Williams, 30 catches for 590 yards, averaging 20 yards per catch, adding 13 contested catches on the year. That's what you're looking for if you're Colorado trying to replace a guy like Will Sheppard. I think more importantly, like building around a new quarterback, whether it's Caden Salter, whether it's Julian Lewis, whoever's starting for Colorado is going to have adequate amount of weapons to have success in 2025. And in Joseph Williams' case, he'll be back in 2026. He'll be a pass catcher for Julian Lewis to push the ball down the field too as well. You start looking at this wide receiver room and what it might be. Yeah, on paper, you're losing a lot of really good wide receivers, right? Travis Hunter, arguably the best in the game, but LeJohntay Wester, Will Sheppard, Jimmy Horn, all guys that will be playing on Sundays in the NFL. You take a look at what this wide receiver room might look like. Joseph Williams, to me, kind of replacing that X wide receiver on the boundary that Will Sheppard gave you. You look at Draylon Miller going into year two. He's just going to have an increased role. And even as a true freshman, with all the playmakers that Colorado had in 2024, they were still trying to make it a strong emphasis to get Draylon Miller the football. And so you have a feeling in 2025, he's going to be a centerpiece within this Colorado offense. And what you love about Draylon Miller is there's There's nothing that kid can't do. We talked about him being Debo Samuel-esque coming out of high school. It's kind of how Colorado like to use him. Like, they'll put him in the backfield, they'll put him on the boundary, they'll put him in the slot. You can get him involved any way possible. You have a couple other names. Marion Miller coming back from injury. I think he's going to have a big year for Colorado in 2025. You got Quentin Gibson, who's a low 3-star according to 24/7 Sports because he's on the smaller side. Quentin Gibson just broke Jackson Smith-Njigba's touchdown record his senior year down there in Texas. 36 touchdown catches in 2020 in his senior season. This is a guy that nobody's really going to be talking about when he comes to Colorado. That kid can play and probably goes a long way in replacing that LeJohntay Wester kind of wide receiver in this Colorado offense. And you start looking at it and saying, all right, on paper, you're losing a lot of good wide receivers, but you are replacing it with a lot of exciting young talent winding up in Boulder heading into 2025. And you take a look at what Colorado's done in the transfer portal, and we kind of said this, it probably wasn't going to be 30-plus transfers in this cycle. It had to be when Coach Prime first took over. Like, that roster needed to be overturned if he wanted any chance of winning football games in 2023. They obviously did it. And then in 2024, it was less, but it was still a lot of names that you still had to work on and address. Now you're looking at it and saying, the number's not going to be as big, but the quality is going to be there. Caden Salter, one of the more coveted quarterbacks that you saw in the transfer portal. Makari Vickers, a young, talented cornerback coming over from Oklahoma. Gabriel Lightfoot, a guy that a lot of people wanted to kind of bolster some depth on the defensive line. You start scrolling down, Reginald Hughes from Jack State, tackle machine. Zach Atkins, a very coveted Division II tight end. Jaheim Otis, the number one defensive lineman in the portal, and Carter Miller, a guy that we think could be a plug-and-play interior offensive lineman, guy that started the last 2 seasons at one at JMU and one at Louisiana Monroe. I don't think Colorado's nearly done in the transfer portal, but it is worth noting that the quantity might not be as high. The quality certainly is, and they're addressing those positions they needed to address. I would expect a few more wide receivers to be added. And I think they got the guys to have success in the wide receiver, but you probably want some more veteran presence, you might say, in the wide receiver room. And the good thing for Colorado is there is a surplus of talent at the wide receiver position that's currently available in the transfer portal. Now that you got Caden Salter and Julian Lewis, a little clearer picture of what the quarterback spot's going to be, there's going to be some quarterbacks that are lining up, or I should say wide receivers that are lining up to come play offense for Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes in 2025. We'll pause it there. Joseph Williams, a guy that might not get a ton of news, national media headlines, but a guy that I think certainly can have a really big impact on this offense in 2025. Appreciate you guys checking it out. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.